Good afternoon, comrades. Welcome to Philly DSA's 2021 National Convention Report Back. If you're watching this recording, we're all deeply appreciative. We are releasing this as a recording since this event originally coincided with the Eagles game. So thanks very much for taking the time out of your busy lives to understand what exactly happened at the National Convention this year and what that means for us as Philly DSA comrades. So my name is Onlin Wang, use he, him pronouns. I'm currently an at-large member of the steering committee, and I was the chair of the Philly DSA's delegation this year to the National Convention. So before we even get into what is the National Convention, here's just a bit of an agenda for what we're going to be going through today, just so you can skip through easily as need be. First, we're going to be talking about what is the National Convention, why it's relevant. We're also going to be talking about the National Political Committee and our electoral work, labor, mutual aid, internationalism, eco-socialism, and housing, as far as subject matters that occurred that are all relevant under the National Convention this year. And finally, we also passed the DSA platform this year, so we're just going to spend a little bit going over that as well. So first, what is the National Convention? So you may remember earlier in this year, Philly DSA, we had a local convention. That local convention serves as the highest decision-making body of our organization. It is the way in which we put the D in the Democratic Socialists of America. And similarly, the national organization functions in a bit of a similar way. Obviously, it's not quite possible in a 95,000 person organization to pull every single member's opinion on every single issue. So instead, we have a convention that occurs every 2 years, that acts as the highest decision-making body for the entire organization. This convention is comprised of delegates from each chapter of the organization, with total delegation size determined by the population of members in each chapter. Philly DSA this year got 23 delegates to the National Convention. Between the National Convention, the highest decision-making body is the National Political Committee, or NPC. It's an acronym we'll be using a lot in today's presentation. That NPC is elected at our National Convention every 2 years. So it's a really important event where we quite literally set the political direction of the organization. One of the other ways we set the political direction of the organization is by making decisions on what resolutions and constitutional changes and bylaws changes are going to be binding the org for the next 2 years as well. So some of those resolutions that passed that have, I think, big implications for us include building resolutions 5, 8, 14, and 31. These cover topics ranging from labor organizing, electoral work, and our relationship to the Democratic Party or possibly a new political party, internationalism, and a commitment to multiracial organizing. One other thing I should note is that the NPC also has its own steering committee, which is comprised of 5 members. They meet between the bigger NPC meetings as well. As for the constitutional bylaws changes, there was nothing that was passed. It is quite difficult to pass these. It takes a 2/3 supermajority. And so as it stood, none of them passed this time around. As I said earlier, we also passed the platform for the first time. Very excited about that. And we'll probably send out a link to that in our bulletin. And finally, I think another note that of relevance for all DSA chapters is that by having a convention online, this really did help standardize practices for online voting and convention running across the organization. Moving on, let's actually start with the discussion of what happened with the National Political Committee, election. Austin, Comrade Austin, could you kick us off?
Absolutely, Comrade Onlin. Hi, everyone. My name's Austin Binns. I use he, him, his pronouns. This past summer, you elected me to be one of your national convention delegates. I'm here giving a report back on what happened with our national political committee election, along with reporting back on the electoral work resolution that was passed as well. So our MPC represents the best elements of our multi-tendency org. We elect this MPC using a single transferable vote system, where every delegate ranked their candidates 1 through 16 on their preferred candidates that they wanted to see on the MPC. The winning candidates who won were Jen McKinney, Sabrina Chan, Sofia Guillermez Cutler, Gilman Baga, Christian Hernandez, Laura Gabby, Ashik Sadiq, Gustavo Gordillo, Aaron Warner, Justin Charles, Jennifer Jenbo Bolin, Matt Miller, Jose Alejandro La Luz, Sidney Gazarian, Austin Gonzalez, and Kara Hall. Of these MPC members, they actually do represent a very broad swath of our multi-tendency org. 3 members are from the Socialist Majority Caucus, 3 from the Green New Deal slate, 3 from the Bread and Roses Caucus, 2 from the Renewal slate, 1 from the Libertarian Socialist Caucus, and 4 independent candidates were also elected. So, as Onlin said, this National Political Committee governs our organization in between each of our conventions. So these will be our elected leaders that will govern our organization for the next 2 years until our next national convention in 2023. Next slide, please, Comrade. So the next thing I want to talk about was actually resolution number 5, towards a mass party in the United States. This resolution was written by members collectively by our National Electoral Committee. For those who don't know, our National Electoral Committee is the main body that was created by the MPC to help support our nationally endorsed candidates and also provide recommendations to the MPC on which candidates should get our national endorsement. So Resolution 5 passed pretty overwhelmingly. It had 728 delegates voted in favor and 217 delegates voted against. So it represented pretty much the consensus opinion of what DSA's electoral work should be. And it also marked that there was a pretty broad approval for how DSA has been currently doing our electoral work. So right now, this resolution commits DSA and its local chapters to the project of building a working class party. It also commits DSA chapters to building the organization and skills necessary to recruit candidates for political office. And when it comes to DSA's relationship to the Democratic Party, this resolution advocates for our continuing DSA's successful approach of tactically contesting partisan elections on the Democratic ballot line, while specifically building power independent of the Democratic Party apparatus. So this resolution is basically a continuation of a lot of the amazing electoral work that you have seen DSA do over the past few years, including electing amazing candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, or Rashida Tlaib, or even right here in Philly when it comes to Nikhil Saval, Liz Fiedler, or Rick Krajewski. So I'm glad that this resolution passed, and I will now be passing it off to our comrade to talk about the labor resolution.
All right. Anlin, did you want to briefly touch on the consent agenda?
I do. So Comrade Austin referenced that. So what that refers to is because there are so many resolutions that are submitted to each national convention, convention planners basically send out a poll of how convention delegates feel before the conference in order to get a sense of which resolutions can be packaged into a single vote, known as the consent agenda. So basically everything that ends up on there is stuff that's considered broadly popular as measured through that initial poll. And the convention takes a vote on that entire set of resolutions as one vote in order to save as much time as possible for the important democratic debate that has to be had on everything else that's more controversial. Anyways, we'll be revisiting that later again, this discussion. Francisco, do you want to tell us about labor?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a little bit of context, I think, on a very basic level, labor is a priority within DSA as a socialist organization. Building power through labor organizing is one of the most powerful ways in which we can build power systematically within the working class with various levers, and strategically using the worksite as the way through which we build power, because that is how we can stop the mode of capitalist production at critical moments of crises and win major gains society-wide and on the workplace level, to workplace by workplace, improving the lives of workers. And resolution number 5, and I think my comrade Austin had mixed up the 8 and 5, because I think the electoral resolution was number 8 and resolution 5 was the labor one, which is building power to win democratic socialism, a labor strategy for DSA in 2021 and 2023. It recommits to labor as a priority, and on campaigns specifically like the PROACT campaign that we have done, have been undergoing through both the EcoSocialism Working Group and Democratic Socialist Labor Committee, which is also one of the primary body through, or Labor Commission, through which is one of the primary organizations internally within DSA that really supports labor work around the country on a national level, and helps chapters kind of do labor solidarity work, engage in labor campaigns. But this resolution, which was kind of a consensus resolution that had been drafted through the Democratic Socialist Labor Commission and across multiple caucuses and tendencies within the organization, really did multiple things. It committed us to organizing the unorganized and organizing our workplaces across the country. The need to have democratic socialists and members of DSA really work to build power in their workplaces. It committed the DSLC to supporting local partnerships with unions. It also committed us to building, democratizing and transforming our unions for those of us who are in unions through, through what is often partially called the rank and file strategy, but not explicitly mentioning it as such. But it is a really important way through which we build power in labor. These types of strategies have led to major victories for working class communities in cities like Chicago and LA. And it directs strategic network building via industry or sector to build kind of strong labor support for labor organizing. And it also directs staff, or tries to put forward setting aside resources and to direct staff to support labor work across the country and across multiple chapters. And you can find out more information about the DSLC at labor.dsausa.org. And I'm very excited about this passing. There were a couple amendments that have been put forward, but though ultimately no amendments were passed, and resolution number 5, as it was written, passed with pretty strong support across the board. And I'm very excited as a kind of longstanding commitment for the organization, and I'm sure we'll have ramifications for my and many other folks' work through the Philly DSA's labor branch. And with that, I think I'm going to pass it. I forget who's next, but I'm going to hand it over to whoever's next to talk.
All right, no worries at all. Meg, are you able to tell us a bit about mutual aid?
Yes. So this section's a little bit different, and that's because there weren't actually any resolutions at this convention about mutual aid. However, another part of the convention experience is the workshops. This convention was also a little bit different because it was stretched out over time. And so we had this really great opportunity during the week that it ran. It sort of started on a Sunday and it ended on a Sunday. But most of the voting was over the weekends. But on the weeknights, we would have sort of like 3 or 4 hour blocks where we got to go to all these different really awesome workshops. And today I'm going to talk to you about the mutual aid workshops that were put on by our mutual aid working group, which is sort of our national level hub for mutual aid work. So just to start us off, what is mutual aid? Mutual aid is working class people helping other working class people. Why do we do mutual aid? because it is a way of addressing material needs while also building our skills as organizers, building our capacity for larger projects, and recruiting people to become organizers. And if we go to the next slide, Break Light Clinic. This is one of the 2 events that the Mutual Aid Working Group put on. And I think it's a really good example of what mutual aid is and how it can be used in a campaign. And so I was going to take a minute just to highlight a little bit about that event. And so a Break Light Clinic is an event where you either replace or you teach people how to replace brake lights for free. Why? Well, when you replace someone's brake light, you take away a reason for the police to stop them, and you take away a contact with the police. While you are replacing their brake light, you also have a chance to talk to them. So you get to know the community, you have a chance to have organizing and political conversations and build relationships. If we go to the next slide. So all of this was coordinated by the National Mutual Aid Working Group. They're on Twitter at DSA Mutual Aid. And the great news for all of those who were not able to attend the convention is that the Mutual Aid Working Group is actually running these workshops again. And I think also possibly more. So if you go to tinyurl.com/MAWG training 21, and I think we'll have these slides and that is linked, you can sign up. They're going to be happening over the next few months. And also, if you are in Philly DSA and you're interested about talking about mutual aid, you can feel free to reach out to me, Meg, or to Luke M. Slack is a great way to do that. And I'm going to hand it off to, I think it's Ron.
Thank you, Meg. Hi, everyone. Ron here, he, him pronouns, and I'll be giving the presentation on internationalism at the National Convention. So with regards to internationalism, I'll kick it off by discussing 2 events that were hosted during the convention. One was the Socialist Internationalism in the 21st Century. It was a high-profile international plenary which featured multiple distinguished leaders in the international socialist and labor movements. It featured Jeremy Corbyn, who used to lead the Labour Party in UK, Dilma Rousseff, former president of Brazil, Kara Tagawa, Secretary for International Affairs of the Philippine Labor Solidarity Center, Kilusang Maya Uno, Karina Sosa, who is the Adjunct General Secretary of the Farabundo Marti National Liberation Front, which is a political movement based in El Salvador. Next up, we had Monica Valente, Executive Secretary for the Sao Paulo, and last but not least, Omar Barghouti, who helped co-found the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement of the Palestinian liberation cause. So the speakers, they spoke about their own experiences, the need for international solidarity and anti-imperialist work, and also emphasized the work that DSA has done within the United States in highlighting some of these issues. Beyond that, we had the International Committee also presented a panel called Socialist Internationalism and DSA to delegates. In this panel, the IC elected to highlight its work in opposing US wars, working to end vaccine apartheid, supporting the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement for Palestinian rights, forging ties with Latin American mass parties, and supporting the activities of DSA members living abroad in Europe. So these were the 2 high-profile events. So let's move on to the next slide about International Committee resolutions. Before delving into it, I just want to give a very brief primer on the context with regards to the International Committee. So International Committee has been one of the longest standing bodies of national DSA, but it has constantly changed in terms of its structures and in terms of its scope. After the DSA membership boom, which began in 2016 after Trump's election, the national organization as a whole expanded rapidly, but the International Committee, it hadn't quite updated with the membership boost that happened. So at the 2019 National Convention, there were proposals. There was a proposal to restructure the International Committee to make it more open to the membership and to get it more engaged in some of the work, like building solidarity with mass movements in Latin America. So that resolution of the 2019 convention passed, and since then, the International Committee has been undergoing a process of restructuring, with more people becoming appointed to the IC leadership, all under the aegis and the supervision of the National Political Committee, which is the highest elected body within DSA. So with the International Committee restructuring still undergoing, there are a lot of debates on how DSA can best serve the tasks of international solidarity and anti-imperialism, which is why there was a lot of debate concerning that at this 2021 National Convention. Now, in terms of the main proposals, there was the Committing to International Socialist Solidarity Resolution and the platform amendment called International Solidarity, Anti-Imperialism, and Anti-Militarism. Both of them came from IC members, and they were both passed overwhelmingly at the National Convention. And the Committing to International Socialist Solidarity in particular commits the IC to a few things. It basically resolved that DSA and the International Committee would commit to 5 types of solidarity building activities with a particular emphasis on Latin America. It first calls on the IC to begin the process of developing election observer delegations to be sent on a regular basis with a particular emphasis on Americas. Second, it calls on the IC to begin the process of developing exchange programs with mass parties in other countries with the goals of knowledge sharing and building DSA's relationships with the international left. Third, it calls on the IC to continue the efforts to build relations with mass parties of the Latin American left, specifically to create a program where members of these parties living in the US can be invited to participate in DSA chapters, or reverse, DSA members living abroad can be invited to participate in their countries' respective parties. Fourth, this resolution mandates DSA to formalize an institutional partnership with For de Sao Paulo, which is a coalition group of which is an international gathering of left-wing political parties and movement organizations in Latin America. It is founded by PT, a Brazilian left party in the city of Sao Paulo decades ago. And finally, last but not least, it calls on the IC to prioritize chapter and member development by creating chapter toolkits and by recruiting from affected and marginalized communities. So this resolution, it charts a new course with a major democratic mandate for the International Committee in terms of the work that we do. Now, besides this, there were also a few other resolutions more directly aimed at restructuring the International Committee itself along various lines. But one resolution that got on the agenda, R18, International Committee and Mass Organizing, that was voted down, and the other resolutions, they did not get on the convention agenda at all, so they were not debated. So that is that's the information on the international resolutions for the DSA National Convention. And if anyone is interested in getting involved with the International Committee, please let Anglin or I know. We are in the International Committee, but we also encourage people to apply at dsaic.org/apply if you want to apply and get involved with the International Committee at the national level. That's all there is from me, and I will give the floor to the next section.
Thanks very much, Ron. Again, that's DSA, DSA US, or actually, I'm sorry, I forgot the URL, but we'll make sure we get it in later. So I'm going to talk about eco-socialism in the National Convention this year. The main thing is that there was only one resolution that was passed. It was an eco-socialist priority, resolution number 12, if you're curious, and it was passed in that consent agenda. What this does is it expands the current Green New Deal Campaign Committee, which is our national entity which oversees the national level involvement and coordination with Green New Deal and eco-socialist level, national level eco-socialist campaigns. And specifically add staff hours that are equivalent to a full-time organizer. So that could mean the MPs, that the National Org could hire another organizer just for eco-socialist work, or it could just mean adding additional hours onto current staff's workloads, to basically be equivalent to having an organizer. In any case, if you're curious, you can how this is going to be implemented and developed. I encourage you to follow. I encourage you to follow the Eco-Socialist Working Group on Twitter at DSA EcoSocialism. You can also go to the website at ecosocialist.dsausa.org if you're interested in joining the Eco-Socialist Working Group. And finally, if you're interested in how this might plug into us here in Philly DSA, I highly encourage you to sign up for next Sunday, actually, at 1 p.m. The G&D Commission is having an open strategy session. So you can find that on phillydsa.org/events. Next up, let's talk about housing. Meg, are you able to do that for us?
Yes, I am. All right. Housing. So we did pass one pretty significant resolution about housing. Resolution number 21, prioritizing tenant organizing. So this was also passed as part of the consent agenda. The big takeaway there is that it was supported by at least 2/3 of the delegates, which means it had a really broad base of support. What it does is it affirms DSA's commitment to tenant organizing as a priority campaign, and it's going to be coordinated by the National Housing Justice Commission. The National Housing Justice Commission is the national level, it's like a working group, but it's a commission, and they are the national level group that is organizing around housing justice and specifically tenant organizing. They wrote this resolution, and they are also the body that will carry out the resolution. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do training and support both for individual members and for chapters. They're going to help chapters identify tenant organizing opportunities, and they're going to dedicate specific research time to looking into how chapters who maybe aren't in a traditional urban setting where there are a lot of like apartment buildings, multi-unit properties, how can less urban areas also do tenant organizing? And so if we go to the next slide. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Housing Justice Commission itself. So you can follow them on Twitter at DSA_housing. Like I said, they're the ones that submitted resolution 21. They're going to be carrying out the campaign. They're going to be putting on trainings. They're going to be offering support. They're about to kick off the training and development arm of the commission this upcoming week. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. There's almost certainly going to be trainings and events happening coming out of there. And since one of our chapter's major projects is our SOS campaign, our Stump Out Slumlords campaign through our housing committee, this is going to be very exciting for us. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sean to talk about the platform.
Hello, everyone. So one of the really significant and different than past conventions, things that happened was that the body of the convention adopted a platform. And DSA has not had a platform before. Essentially what it is like, what is it that we stand for? It's our vision for the world that we're working towards. And it demands in detail all of the parts of capitalist society that must go in order to realize that vision. So there are some pieces that are like, the final state of the world that we are working towards, but also pieces that are like, here are all the steps along the way. Here are all of the things that we need to dismantle, replace, rethink in order to get there. there is a lot of detail in here, but it really does, in broad strokes, cover kind of like everything that we work on. This is the product of drafting, feedback, circulation, and an amendment process that really lasted over a few months. We'll send around these slides so you'll see that there's that second draft is linked, as well as 3 amendments that passed. So the final version will be the draft 2 plus the amendments that I think in 2 cases it strikes a whole section and replaces it. In another case, there's a kind of a tacked on section. And so this document is really great for if someone says, what does DSA stand for? You really can like send them this. And it's longish. It's around 20 or some odd pages. But I think if someone is like willing to take an hour and like really sift through it, and they're like, you know, just learning about DSA, this is like a really great thing that we have now to send. I'm gonna go to the next slide. These are the sections. So these are all kind of the broad topics that it touches. Deepening and strengthening democracy, abolition of the carceral state, abolition of white supremacy, a powerful labor movement, economic justice, gender and sexuality justice, Green New Deal, health justice, housing for all, international solidarity, anti-imperialism, and militarism are the sections. And if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the more detailed pieces. I picked these to show the range of things, not because I find them like particularly more important or compelling than other details. I just wanted to give a sense of like, this is the like kind of level of granularity that the platform kind of gets into. So community self-governance and care, not cops, is in the abolishing the carceral state section. The red deal shows up, I think, in multiple places. Reparations legislation, social ownership of all major industry and infrastructure, canceling student loan and medical debt, closing all US foreign military bases. This last one is kind of getting cut off, so I'm going to go to my, okay, here we go. Support and self-determination for Palestinian people, guaranteeing queer-friendly and gender-affirming healthcare, fully decriminalizing sex work nationwide, establishing public ownership of all energy utilities and the electrical grid, free medical nursing education for healthcare workers, public housing for all, and working with colonized peoples for forgiveness of all debts and granting of reparations to the survivors of colonialism. So lots of like really, really big, like radical, awesome, this is the world I want to live in stuff that I think is really, it's important for everyone to like read at some point because this includes like so much of the work that chapters and nationally that we could be doing and shares that, you know, large vision that DSA members share. And I think that's the end of my part, which means that's the end of this, and I'll hand it off to Anlin to close it out.
Thanks very much. I really can't emphasize how excited I am. You know, that we have a platform now. Doesn't necessarily mean we agree with literally every single point on there, but you can always say this is what the organization stands for, right? So that's really powerful for me. Makes me feel like I belong to a bigger movement. Wanted to open up the floor for questions. Does anyone have any right now?
Hey, Anlin, were there other things that we didn't cover in this slide deck that happened?
I think so. I think one of the highlights that you know I wasn't really, I wasn't sure how it could go in a presentation like this, you know, in the space of an hour, is the trainings and the panel events. Those are things I was just generally very excited about. Ron referenced some of them. Ron referenced my favorite one, the international one, and the internationalism one. But in addition to the panels, there were also trainings that occurred on a number of things. I mean, like a pretty wide variety: how to run meetings, how to there was a compliance training where they showed where they showed people delegates how to navigate the DSA's compliance guide online. So as a resource for chapters to basically navigate legal issues they may run into in the course of their work. those are some highlights that you know that we do actually have notes taken up on taken on them for. We're going to send them out as part of that as part of the same bulletin or separate email. It's going to contain the report as well. This is a good question, Sean. You mind missing anything there? Are any other delegates here want to speak to anything?
I would just add also there were a lot of really good trainings. The mutual aid ones were part of that, but also we didn't have a chance really to include it in this, but the National Disability Working Group did a whole training on accessibility, which was really awesome. And they very kindly shared the whole slideshow with us, which has all kinds of links and resources. And so that should be included in that same sort of bundle of information that is going to go out and be shared. And I'm very excited for that to be shared with all of you.
Thanks very much, Meg. Any other questions? Miles, do you have one?
Yeah, I was just interested in what the general conversation around U.S.-China relations was at the DSA National Conference. I know there's been it's kind of been like a topic of concern. I've been seeing some iffy takes by DSA people regarding the People's Republic of China, and I was just wondering how the conversation was at the National Convention.
Sure. I think I'm happy to take this one. Definitely here. You know, anyone else feel free to weigh in as well. So I think there actually wasn't much of that. You know, I think one of the things that happened with the National Convention this year is, so as far as like the discussion on things like not relating to direct convention business, that was basically limited to the Slack, to the delegate Slack workspace, which has now been deleted. And within that, there was pretty vociferous debate on honestly, like I would say probably at least like half the resolutions, probably maybe a little bit less than that. And so I think in that context, there wasn't, I think, that much like opportunity to talk about specifically China, and there wasn't any resolutions submitted about China specifically as well or the CPC. But obviously it's an issue of great importance and one that a lot of members have strong opinions on. But there was nothing that emerged on it, I think, with regards to direct convention business this time.
I guess can folks hear me, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, great. I will echo what Alan said, but also add some comments. Yeah, there was no specific debate around China or how to orient towards internal Chinese affairs. However, in the platform amendment that was passed, it does contain some language regarding China, which I'm happy to read out loud. But basically, the DSA national platform now contains the following language. So this calls on the US government. So end nationalistic posturing toward China, including the current trade war and any future aggressive economic, diplomatic, or military action. Seek to promote peaceful resolution of disputes with China and work with China on climate change and the threat of pandemics. And the other clause reads, turn away from a new Cold War with China and instead seek to promote peaceful resolution of disputes with China, and of course, work with China on climate change and threat of pandemics. So the DSA national platform now commits DSA to opposing US aggression against China and calling for more diplomatic cooperation between the US and China, but otherwise does not take a stance on China.
Thanks very much, Ron. That's a good flag. Miles, does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, perfectly. I was really just concerned about the new Cold War against China, and it's just as a leftist, it's really scary. All of the just China bashing I'm seeing in mainstream media, trying to get the American public ready to be okay with a war or some sort of just hybrid war that only serves to hurt humanity in the long run. So I'm glad DSA like passed something specifically explicitly against a new Cold War. So that's really just what I was wanting to hear. That's great news. Thank you guys for letting me know.
For sure, for sure. Thanks very much for voicing that, Miles. And as a Chinese American myself, I'm also appreciative. And also, we're getting near the end of time, but I just also want to note this does not have to be the end of this conversation. As you see from the screen, I've left my email there. You can also easily find me on Slack just through the name Onlin Wang when you type it into the search bar. If there are no other questions, I'll move on to the closing. Which is that basically it's just a quote, but I think it does a good job of grounding us in the fact that we are here as part of a broader national working class movement. That if you're in this org, it's a pretty good chance that you joined, like most everyone else who did, to be part of a mass movement and to not proceed forward in trying to make social change in a siloed manner, in a powerless manner, in an alienated manner. That's one reason I'm deeply appreciative of this org, and I look forward to being in this fight with all of you guys in the long haul. So to close us out, DSA organizes to realize our working class collective power, which stems from the reliance of the capitalist economy on our labor. Democracy is necessary to win a socialist society. Socialism is the complete realization of democracy. Our fight to end capitalist exploitation is inextricably tied to our fight to end oppression. A democratic socialist society must end all systemic domination, whether it's based on race, religion, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, disability, or gender. Comrades, that's the mission that unites us all. And to the extent that you believe in that too, I'm proud to be in this fight with all of you. Once again, my email address I guess I'll drop in the chat, but just to bring it back one more time, it's onlin_wang@yahoo.com. Thanks for joining us this Sunday afternoon, especially if you're missing the game. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Go to phillydsa.org/events to sign up to look at the number of cool things we have coming up. We got an upcoming Fall of Capitalism Festival. We have that open strategy session for our Green New Deal Commission, as I mentioned earlier. We got a lot of things going on, and I guarantee there's a way you can plug in. So thanks again for your time. Don't hesitate to reach out. Don't be a stranger. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, comrades.
Thanks, y'all.